You feel the sun bake the mail quaff to your scalp, long before you see the land. The air, once sharp with the clean salt of the open Mediterranean, has grown thick, heavy with the scent of silt, dust, and something ancient and vegetative. You stand on the crowded deck of a Venetian galley, the wood groaning beneath your feet, one hand resting on the pommel of your sword. For months, this ship has been your world, a floating sliver of Christendom packed with restless knights, grim-faced sergeants, and the unending murmur of prayer. Around you, the sea is a forest of masts. Hundreds of ships, a migration of wood and sail, carry the hopes of the Fourth Crusade. In your world, the one you remember, this fleet turned north. It fell upon the Christian city of Zara to pay its debts, then was lured by the siren song of an exiled Byzantine prince and the unfathomable riches of Constantinople. It became a monstrous act of fratricide, a sacking that broke the back of the Eastern Roman Empire and poisoned the schism between Catholic and Orthodox for 1,000 years. It never reached the Holy Land. But here, on this deck, under this sun, that history is a ghost, a nightmare that never happened. The old man, Enrico Dandolo, Doge of Venice, held the army to its purpose. Blind he may be, but his mind's eye sees the world with a clarity that shames sighted men. He sees ledgers and trade routes, weaknesses and pressure points. Constantinople was a temptation, a glittering prize of sibling rivalry. But Egypt was the objective. It was the throat of the Ayyubid Sultanate, the source of its grain, its gold, and its soldiers. To take Egypt was not merely to conquer a city, but to seize the heart and cut the arteries of Saracen power. Dandolo's cold commercial logic, fused with the burning piety of the Frankish lords, created a weapon of singular purpose. And now, that weapon is aimed. The cry comes from the crow's nest, a triumphant shout that ripples from ship to ship. Alexandria! You strain your eyes, and there it is. Not a city of high towers like you know at home, but a low smear on the horizon, punctuated by the ghostly stump of what was once the great Pharaoh's lighthouse. A finger of broken stone pointing to a forgotten sky. The port is a chaotic web of lateen-rigged dows and fishing skiffs. They have seen you. The panic on the water is a visible thing, a frantic scattering of birds before a storm. There is no hesitation. The Venetian sailors, the finest in the world, maneuver their high-sided transports with terrifying precision. Ramps slam down into the shallows. The war horses, terrified after weeks at sea, scream as they are winched onto the sand, their hooves churning the surf into a brown foam. You jump into the waist-deep water. The sudden coolness a shock against your sweat-soaked gambeson. The banner of your lord, a simple cross on a field of blue, is unfurled ahead. The trumpets sound, a raw, brazen call that cuts through the panicked shouts from the city walls. The battle for Alexandria is brutal but short. The Ayyubid garrison is unprepared, accustomed to raids, not a full-scale invasion by the greatest army Europe has assembled in a generation. Your heavy cavalry, once on solid ground, is an irresistible force. The charge across the sand is a thunderous wall of steel and horseflesh. The city's defences, meant to repel sea raiders, crumble before a professional siege. Within a week, the cross flies over the ruins of the Pharos. But this is not the prize. This is merely the beachhead. The true goal lies south, up the river that is the life of this land. The march to Cairo is a fever dream. The heat is a physical presence, a weight on your shoulders. The landscape is alien, a flat, green ribbon of impossible fertility flanked by an endless ocean of sterile sand. You see pyramids in the distance, geometric mountains that seem to mock the smallness of man's ambition. You learn a new respect for water, a new hatred for the Sunday. The Nile is not a river. It is a god, a serpent of green life, coiled in a universe of death, and you are a trespasser in its domain. Sultan al-Adil, brother of the great Saladin, musters his forces to meet you. He is a shrewd commander, but his army is a reflection of his empire, a collection of disparate parts. Kurdish horsemen, Bedouin skirmishers, Turkish Mamluks, and local Egyptian levies. They harass your columns, picking off stragglers, their arrows a constant, whining threat. But they cannot stand against your main force in open battle. They lack the crushing, unified weight of the Frankish charge. The decisive battle comes on the plains north of Cairo. It is a collision of worlds. Your world is one of iron discipline, of knights fighting shoulder to shoulder, a single armoured beast of faith and fury. Theirs is a world of fluid movement, of feigned retreats and swift counterattacks. You stand in the infantry line, your shield locked with your brother's, the pikes a hedge of thorns around you. You hear the prayers of the priests mingling with the curses of the sergeants. Then the ground begins to shake. The Frankish nobility, 5,000 of them, lower their lances as one. The trumpet sounds. The avalanche begins. You have seen it a dozen times, but it never fails to steal the breath from your lungs. It is not a charge. It is an act of God's judgment delivered at the point of a lance. The Ayyubid line shatters. It does not bend. It disintegrates into 1,000 fragments of terror and flight. The Mamluks, the slave soldiers who form the elite of the Sultan's army, fight with a terrifying bravery, but they are an island of resistance swallowed by a tide of steel. Cairo, the vast, sprawling city of 1 million souls, falls a week later. There is looting, there is violence. But it is not the mindless, chaotic rampage that broke Constantinople in another timeline. This is a strategic conquest. The leaders of the Crusade, Boniface of Montferrat, Louis of Blois, Baldwin of Flanders, know they are not here to destroy Egypt, but to rule it. You patrol the bewildering streets of the captured city. You see wonders that beggar the imagination. Libraries filled with books of science and philosophy, hospitals that are clean and orderly, markets overflowing with goods you never knew existed, spices that numb the tongue, silks as fine as water, intricate works of brass and glass. You came here to fight the infidel, the Saracen, a caricature drawn for you in church sermons. You find a civilization. This is the great, unforeseen consequence. The twist in the fabric of fate. In the Levant, the Crusader kingdoms were always a coastal fringe, a series of castles clinging to a hostile land. They were an outpost. But here, you are not on the fringe. You have seized the throne of an ancient kingdom, a bureaucratic, agricultural machine that has run for 3,000 years. A council of the great lords declares the formation of the Frankish Kingdom of Egypt. Baldwin of Flanders is elected its first king, and he, in his first official act, does something that sends a murmur of confusion and dissent through the ranks. He does not expel the local administrators. He does not outlaw the Coptic Church or the Muslim faith. He confirms the old tax rights, re-establishes the grain shipments, and orders the Frankish knights to protect the irrigation canals. You came as a soldier of Christ, but you are becoming a tax collector of the Nile. Your lord is given a fief, not of rocky hills and sparse olive groves as he might have received in Outremer, but of rich, black delta soil, complete with villages of Muslim fellahin, who have been tilling this land since the time of Moses. Your mission was to reclaim the Holy Land for Christendom, but to hold Egypt, to fund the next stage of the war, you must ensure the harvests are brought in, the taxes are collected, and the populace remains quiescent. Here lies the ethical tension, the poison pill inside the glorious victory. To maintain this new kingdom, you must become a governor, not just a conqueror. To fund the final war for the Holy Sepulchre, You must protect the very infidels you swore an oath to fight. The call to prayer still echoes from the minarets of Cairo, a daily reminder of who you are and where you are. It is permitted, for now, because a silent mosque pays no taxes. The Coptic Christians, once a tolerated minority under the Muslims, find they are now a tolerated minority under the Catholics. Their ancient rites, viewed with suspicion by the Latin priests who have followed your army. Standing on the walls of the citadel of Cairo, the Frankish cross flying from its highest tower, you look west, toward the setting sun, and the great pyramids it silhouettes. You have done the impossible. You have broken the back of Saladin's legacy. Jerusalem is now within your grasp, a ripe fruit waiting to be plucked. But the crown of Egypt sits heavier than the helmet of a crusader, and you can already feel its weight changing the shape of your soul. You are not a soldier. You have never held a sword, only a stylus. Your armor is not steel, but the heavy silk of a courtier's robe, dyed a deep Tyrian purple that speaks of your rank within the sacred bureaucracy. Your world is one of parchment, wax seals, and the labyrinthine corridors of the great palace of Constantinople. From your marble-framed window, you look out over the Augustaion, the great public square, and see the golden dome of the Hagia Sophia, the Church of Holy Wisdom, catching the morning light. It feels, as it has for 900 years, like the center of the entire world. A few months ago, you stood at this same window and watched the Crusader fleet fill the Sea of Marmara. It was a terrifying sight. A floating city of barbarians, their banners crude and gaudy against the ancient sea walls of your home. You felt a knot of cold dread in your stomach. The city held its breath. The young emperor, Alexios IV, Angelos, brought to the throne by the promises he made to these Latins, was a fool. You and everyone in the palace knew it. He promised them a mountain of gold he did not have, and the submission of a church that would rather die than bend its knee to the Bishop of Rome. You expected the city to burn. You expected the end of the world. And then they left. They sailed south. News trickled in, fragmented and unreliable at first, carried by nervous merchant captains. They had landed in Egypt. They had taken Alexandria. The whispers in the palace were of disbelief, then of scorn. The fools would die in the desert, baked alive in their heavy armor, their simplistic plans undone by the complexities of the Orient. But yesterday, a swift dromon bearing the imperial seal cut through the waters of the Golden Horn. Its captain brought not rumors, but a detailed report from your spies in Cairo. The city has fallen. The Ayyubid Sultanate is broken. The Franks have crowned one of their own, a brute named Baldwin of Flanders, as the King of Egypt. You feel a sensation so alien you can barely name it. Relief. A deep, shuddering exhalation that seems to be shared by the entire city. The storm has broken not upon your head, but upon the head of the Saracen. God, in his wisdom, has turned the barbarian's fury upon the infidel. The city, the Basileia Romaeon, the Roman Empire, as you call yourselves, is safe. The chain remains unbroken. This is the great preservation. In the timeline you almost lived, the Crusaders, betrayed and unpaid, turned on your city. They breached the walls. For 3 days, they subjected the Queen of Cities to a sack of such unimaginable horror that it left a scar on the soul of the world. They shattered the statues of Phidias for scrap metal, melted down the golden altar of the Hagia Sophia, and drunkenly placed a prostitute on the patriarch's throne. They tore the empire apart, parceling it out into petty Latin fiefdoms. The heart of civilization was ripped out, and its treasures, its libraries, its very continuity were scattered to the winds. But that did not happen. You walk through the great library, a place that, in that other world, is now a smoking ruin. You run your hand over the spines of scrolls and codices. Here is the complete history of Thucydides, not the fragmented version the Latin West will know. Here are the full comedies of Aristophanes, the complete works of the early church fathers, the treatises of Alexandrian engineers, mathematicians who calculated the circumference of the earth 1,000 years before. All of it is here. Safe, the living, breathing mind of the classical world, passed down in an unbroken line from Augustus Caesar himself, is still intact. The chain is whole. This continuity is your strength. It is the empire's bedrock. While the West clawed its way out of barbarism, piecing together forgotten fragments of Roman law and Greek philosophy, you have been living it. Your government is not a feudal patchwork of oaths and loyalties. It is a machine, a complex, hierarchical, and deeply cynical bureaucracy that has run an empire for 1,000 years. Taxes are assessed, laws are codified, reports are filed, and history is recorded with a meticulous, weary professionalism. This machine is the skeleton of the empire. The sack of 1,204 would have shattered it. Its survival ensures the empire, though weakened and battered, remains a coherent state. But the relief you feel is quickly curdling into something else. Contempt. And a new kind of fear. The Emperor Alexios IV remains a fool, a Latin lover who is now crowing about his allies and their great victory. He believes this strengthens his position. You and the old, powerful, aristocratic families who truly run this city know it does the opposite. The immediate danger is gone. The Crusaders are gorging themselves on the riches of the Nile. They have no time to come back to Constantinople to collect the debts the foolish emperor promised them. And that gives you room to breathe, room to act. The twist is this. The Crusaders' success in Egypt seals the doom of the man who invited them. In the dark, incense-filled halls of the palace, plots are being woven. A man named Alexios Doukas, nicknamed Mortsouflos for his thick, meeting eyebrows, is the center of this web. He is everything the current emperor is not. Cunning, ruthless, and virulently anti-Latin. In the other history, his desperate seizure of power was a last-gasp defense against the furious Crusaders already camped outside the walls. It was futile. Here, it is a simple, internal matter. A palace coup, of which the city has seen dozens. You are a bureaucrat. You serve the throne, not the man who sits on it. You will adjust the records, draft the new oaths of loyalty, and ensure the grain dole to the city's populace continues uninterrupted. One night, the bell of the Hagia Sophia will toll. The Varangian Guard, the emperor's elite mercenaries of Norse and English descent, will find their loyalties have been bought by a higher bidder. The foolish young Alexios IV and his blind, restored father Isaac II will meet a quiet, regrettable end in some forgotten cell deep beneath the palace. Mortsouflos will be proclaimed Emperor Alexios V, and the city will accept him. It is the Roman way. Here you find the tension, the moral paradox of your salvation. The empire has been saved from external destruction, but this salvation has turned it inward. The brush with death has not humbled it. It has made it harder, more arrogant. The schism between your Orthodox faith and the Latin Catholicism of the West is not healed. It is frozen solid. You see the Crusaders not as brothers in Christ who have won a great victory, but as crude, violent barbarians who got lucky. Their success is an anomaly, a disturbing sign of brute force prevailing in a world that ought to be governed by subtlety, tradition, and divine right. Your divine right. You look down at a map of the world, painted on vellum, that lies on your desk. The world you knew a year ago has vanished. The familiar shape of the Ayyubid Sultanate is gone, replaced by a new, aggressive, and unpredictable entity, a Frankish Kingdom of Egypt. These Latins are now your neighbours to the south. They are no longer a passing threat. They are a permanent feature of the political landscape. They control the Nile, the breadbasket of the Mediterranean. They are rich, and they are armed with the terrifying confidence of victory. The city is safe. The library is intact. The unbroken chain of Roman civilization continues. But you are now caught between the hammer of the Seljuk Turks in Anatolia and a new Frankish anvil in Egypt. You have been spared annihilation, only to find yourself in a more complex and dangerous game than ever before. You smooth the parchment with your hand. The work of the empire must go on. Your city smells of salt, pesto, and dread. You stand in the loggia of your family's palazzo, a fortress of grey stone and pride overlooking the harbour of Genoa. Below, the port is a frenzy of activity, but it is the activity of a disturbed anthill, not a thriving enterprise. Shipwrights argue, merchants mutter in tight, angry clusters, and the stevedores work with a sullen, fearful silence. The Mediterranean, your world, your birthright, stretches out before you, its familiar blue expanse now feeling like the bars of a cage. The news from Cairo arrived not like a thunderclap, but like a slow poison seeping into the city's veins. Venice has won. It is a victory so total, so absolute, that it feels like a refutation of the natural order. For generations, your family, the Spinola, has fought and traded against the Venetians. It was a rivalry of equals, a bitter but balanced dance of galleys and ducats, of spies and contracts. You raided their shipping, they raided yours. You outbid them for alum in Phocaea. They secured a better price for silk in Trebizond. Now, the dance is over. The music has stopped. Enrico Dandolo's blind eyes have seen a truth you refuse to contemplate. While you fought for scraps, he seized the entire table. Venice no longer needs to compete for the Eastern trade. It owns it. The Frankish Kingdom of Egypt is, for all intents and purposes, a Venetian commercial colony. Every peppercorn from the Malabar coast, every bolt of silk from China, every sack of cloves from the Spice Islands that comes up the Red Sea now passes through Venetian hands in Alexandria or Damietta. Your captains return with humiliating stories. They arrive at the mouth of the Nile to find Venetian warships flying the winged lion of street mark, collecting tariffs so ruinous they amount to outright theft. To trade in the richest port on earth, a Genoese must now fill the pockets of a Venetian. The Mediterranean has shrunk. It is no longer a sea of possibilities. It is a Venetian lake. You feel the walls closing in. Your Black Sea colonies, once the jewels of your mercantile empire, are now withering on the vine. The trickle of goods from the Silk Road that reaches them is nothing compared to the torrent flowing into Egypt. Your rivals in the city, the Doria family, advocate for war. A grand, final confrontation to break the Venetian stranglehold. It is a fool's errand, a politics of pride and nostalgia. Venice, fat with the gold of the Nile and the taxes of a kingdom, can build 10 ships for every one of yours. To fight them now would be to commit suicide. You are in the Doge's palace, in a room panelled with dark, fragrant wood. The air is thick with sweat and the smoke of oil lamps. The city's rulers are gathered, their faces etched with the same fear you feel. The Doria representative makes his case for war, his voice booming with hollow bravado. Then, another man speaks. Lamberto Grimaldi. He is a strange man, a navigator and a dreamer, whose ships have already pushed farther into the Atlantic than any before, chasing rumours of islands and strange currents. He is often dismissed as a madman. Tonight, he is the only one who makes sense. He unrolls a map on the great table. It is a new kind of map, a Portolan chart, crisscrossed with rum lines, more practical and less mythical than the old Mappamundi. But the world it shows is still terrifyingly incomplete. Europe, the Mediterranean, North Africa are detailed. But below the Sahara, the coast of Africa curves away into blank parchment. "We are fighting for the front door of the house," Grimaldi says, his voice quiet but intense, cutting through the bluster. "But the house is no longer ours. Dandolo has locked it and holds the only key." He taps the blank space on the map. "So we must stop knocking. We must find another way in." He speaks of the whispers you have all heard, the stories told by Jewish traders who crossed the Sahara with camel caravans, stories of a land of black-skinned kings, of a city named Timbuktu, of a river of gold, the Kingdom of Ghana, the Mali Empire, a source of wealth that does not depend on the Red Sea or the Silk Road, a source of wealth that Venice cannot touch. The trans-Saharan caravans are slow, dangerous, and controlled by Muslim tribes. But what if? Grimaldi whispers, and the room falls silent. What if we could bypass the desert? What if we could reach their river of gold by sea? It is a breathtakingly radical idea. To sail into the unknown, down the coast of a continent that the ancients called the Torrid Zone, a place where the sea was said to boil and the sun would turn a man's skin to charcoal. It is the Genoese Gambit, a desperate, paradigm-shifting pivot, born not of vision, but of suffocation. This becomes the city's secret, all-consuming project. Genoa abandons the Mediterranean. You let the Venetians have their lake. You turn your back on the world you knew and face the terrifying, open expanse of the Atlantic. This is the unexpected twist of your new reality. Venetian success in the East does not lead to a greater European presence there. It forces a European exodus in the opposite direction, a century and a half before its time. You pour your family's fortune into it. The old war galleys, built for the calm waters of the inland sea, are useless for this task. You need a new kind of vessel. On the docks, you oversee the construction of the Coca Oceanica, the ocean-going cog. It is not a graceful ship. It is high-walled, broad-beamed, and deep-hulled, designed to withstand the crushing power of the Atlantic swells. It combines the square sails of the northern cogs for power and speed before the wind, with the lateen sails of your own tradition for maneuverability. She is not beautiful, like a galley. She is a brute, a beast of burden built for a brutal ocean. And here, in the sawdust and the smell of hot pitch, lies the ethical tension of your salvation. You are not financing explorers. You are underwriting a corporate raid on a continent. The first ships that return, years later, bring back things that set the city ablaze with excitement. Gold dust, finer than anything you have ever seen. Casks of Malagueta pepper, a spice to rival anything from the east. And ivory tusks, carved with an artistry that is both alien and exquisite. They also bring back people, a handful at first. West African men and women, captured or traded for, presented to the Doge as curiosities, evidence of the new world you have touched. They are seen as a commodity, like the gold and the ivory. And you quickly realize they are the most valuable commodity of all. The Genoese have a long history with slavery, centered around the Black Sea, dealing in Slavs, Circassians, and Tartars. But this is different. This is the beginning of something new, something industrial. Your sugar plantations on Cyprus and Crete are hungry for labor. The Venetians now control the traditional sources of slaves in the East. But you have found a new source, an entire continent of it. You stand on the docks and watch a new cocker being fitted out. Its hold is not designed for amphorae of wine or bolts of silk. It is being fitted with platforms, with rings for shackles. It is a ship designed to transport human beings as cargo. You are a man of God, a good Catholic. You tell yourself this is a justifiable act, that these people are pagans, and in your service they may find Christ. It is a lie that settles uneasily in your soul. a rationalization for an act of profound greed. The price of Genoa's survival, the cost of escaping the Venetian cage, will be the birth of the Atlantic slave trade, a full 150 years before the Portuguese rounded Cape Bojador in that other history. You are saving your city. You are building a new maritime empire based on West African gold, and in doing so, you are forging the first links in a chain of human misery that will stretch across an ocean and stain the next 500 years of history. The ship's bell rings, a clear, sharp sound that echoes across the water. To you, it sounds like a death knell. You are in the Lateran Palace, and the silence is more profound than any sound. It is the silence of vindication. Sunlight streams through the high, narrow windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air like tiny golden angels. The dispatch lies on the heavy oak table before you. The wax seal was broken with a trembling hand, but your face, as you read the report from your legate in Cairo, remained a mask of serene contemplation. Inside, your soul sings a hymn of triumph so fierce it borders on pride. You are Innocenzo, Innocent III, Vicar of Christ, servant of the servants of God, and the crusade you launched, the singular obsession of your pontificate, has succeeded beyond the wildest prayers of the faithful. It has succeeded as you intended. You remember the letters you sent, the bulls you issued, the impassioned sermons that launched this great enterprise. Your target was always Egypt. You knew, with a clarity you believed was divinely inspired, that the road to Jerusalem ran through Cairo. To take the holy city and hold it required cutting the throat of Saracen power at its source. Yet, you are a student of men as well as God. You knew the greed of the Venetians, the vanity of the Frankish lords. You feared their mission would be corrupted, diverted. When you heard they had attacked the Christian city of Zara, you were plunged into a spiritual crisis. You excommunicated the entire army, a thunderbolt of condemnation that, in your heart, you feared would be ignored. In that other world, your fears were realized 100-fold. The army, rudderless and in debt, fell upon Constantinople, the second city of Christendom, and tore it to pieces. Your excommunication was a whisper in a hurricane. You were left with a victory that was a blasphemy, a crusader state built on the bones of your Orthodox brethren, and a schism that had been a wound turned into a chasm of eternal, unforgivable hatred. But that is not this world. Here the fear of God, or perhaps the cold logic of the blind Doge Dandolo, held the army to its true purpose. Your thunderbolt of excommunication against the sackers of Zara was heeded. The army repented, was absolved, and sailed south. They have done what you commanded. God's will, executed through your office, has been made manifest on earth. The immediate effects are intoxicating. Every crown in Europe feels heavier. Every king a little smaller. Philip of France, John of England, the squabbling princes of the Holy Roman Empire, they all see what you have accomplished. Your authority, the plenitudo potestatis, the fullness of power you have always claimed was inherent in the papacy, is no longer a theological argument. It is a geopolitical fact, proven in the blood and sand of Egypt. You called for an army, and an army was raised. You pointed to the heart of the enemy, and the enemy was struck down. God is with the papacy. Who would dare stand against you now? Then, the second dispatch arrives. It is not from your legate. The scroll is finer, the seal is not of wax but of gold, bearing the double-headed eagle of the Roman Empire in the east. It is from Constantinople. A chill runs through you. You expect a plea, a demand, or perhaps the grovelling submission of the foolish boy emperor Alexios IV, the one who tried to lure the Crusaders to his city. but the letter is from a man who calls himself Alexios V, Ducas Mortsophilos, Emperor of the Romans. Your agents had already sent word of the coup. The pro-Latin emperor is dead. This new man is known to be a hardliner, a leader of the anti-Latin faction, a man who despises everything you represent. You unroll the scroll. The Greek script is elegant, precise, and the tone is unimaginable. It is a letter between equals. It offers no submission. It does not mention the authority of the See of Peter. It is a piece of statecraft, cold, pragmatic, and utterly devoid of the deference you expect. The new emperor congratulates his Latin brothers on their pious victory over the Saracen. He recognizes the new strategic reality in the Eastern Mediterranean and looks forward to a period of mutual cooperation against the Prising-Broism, enemies of Christ. It is the letter of a chess player, acknowledging a brilliant move by his opponent. This is the unexpected twist. The Crusades' success has not brought the Orthodox East to its knees, begging for reunion. It has done the opposite. By sparing Constantinople, by leaving the Byzantine Empire intact, you have preserved a rival. Mortsophilos, freed from the immediate threat of the Crusader fleet, has consolidated his power. He rules a coherent, if weakened, state, and now he offers you not obedience, but an alliance. You summon your curia, the cardinals file into the chamber, their red robes a sea of blood against the ancient stone. The debate is immediate and ferocious. Cardinal Pelagius, your man in the east, his face tanned by the Egyptian sun, argues for caution. The Frankish Kingdom of Egypt is a fragile miracle, he insists. It needs the trade and the tacit support of the Byzantine fleet to survive. It needs Byzantine grain if the Nile harvests fail. A hostile Constantinople could starve the new kingdom in its cradle. The old guard, the theologians and canon lawyers, are outraged. They speak of the great schism of 1054, of the heresy of the Greeks who deny the Filioque, who reject your supreme authority. They demand that you use this moment of strength to force the issue. Send an ultimatum to this new emperor. Accept the primacy of Rome. Reform your liturgy. Add the clause to your creed. Or face the wrath of the victorious Crusader army. This is the ethical tension of your power. You are the guardian of doctrine, the defender of the one true faith. To compromise on theology is to fail in your most sacred duty. But you are also a prince of this world, a shepherd responsible for the well-being of your entire flock, including the new, vulnerable flock in Egypt. To stand on doctrinal purity now could doom the single greatest victory Christendom has won in 200 years. It could lead to a war between the Franks and the Greeks, a war that would make the Saracens the only true victors. You raise a hand, and the chamber falls silent. You look at the faces of your cardinals, and you make a decision. You will act as a king, not a theologian. The nature of the Holy Trinity, you declare, your voice filling the hall, is a mystery to be contemplated in peace. It cannot be solved by the sword. The Emperor of the Romans in Constantinople has reached out a hand in Christian fellowship. We shall take it. You will not heal the schism. That is a task for councils and for saints, in God's own time. You will simply ignore it. You will paper it over, with the necessities of statecraft. You will instruct your legates to avoid theological disputes, to focus on matters of military cooperation and trade. You will treat the Patriarch of Constantinople as a brother, albeit a prodigal and misguided one. Later, alone in your scriptorium, you begin to draft the bull that will change the relationship between the two halves of Christendom for centuries. You use the ancient metaphor, but you give it a new life, a new meaning born of this new reality. You write of the Church as one body, with two lungs, the Latin West and the Greek East. In that other timeline, the phrase would be a wistful prayer for a unity that was already dead. shattered in the rubble of Constantinople. Here, it is a statement of policy. It is a recognition of a truth. For the first time in centuries, the two lungs are breathing again, not in perfect harmony, for one is still sick with the taint of schism, but in a shared rhythm, a rhythm dictated by the common enemy and the intoxicating taste of a shared, stunning victory. The noon call to prayer echoes from the minarets of the Haram al-Sharif, the sound washing over the city like a familiar tide. You do not flinch or reach for a weapon. You simply pause, tasting the air, a mixture of roasting lamb, cardamom, dust, and the sharp medicinal scent of the herb garden you are tending. You are in the Muristan, the great hospital of the Knights of the Order of St. John, and the muezzin's call is merely part of the city's daily rhythm, like the ringing of the bells from the nearby Church of the Holy Sepulchre. One calls the faithful to God, the other to Allah. Both mark the passing of time. You are a Pauline, a term that once dripped with contempt from the lips of newly arrived European knights, meaning a colt, a half-breed. Now, it is simply what you are. You were born in Jerusalem, as was your father before you. Your French is the rough tongue of the camp. But you whisper pillow talk to your lover in Arabic, and debate the humours of the body in the fluid, precise Greek of the physicians from Constantinople. Your skin is tanned a darker shade than any Frank's, and your diet is one of figs, dates, and goat cheese, not the heavy pottage of your ancestors. The Holy Land is not a place you are fighting for. It is your home. This Jerusalem, your Jerusalem of 1295, is a city that should not exist. In the history you almost lived, the Crusader states were a fading dream by now. The Battle of Hattin in 1187 was a cataclysm from which they never truly recovered. Acre, their last great stronghold, fell to the Mamluks 4 years ago in that other world. Its defenders slaughtered, its walls razed to the ground. The dream of Outremer was over. A bloody footnote in the chronicles of failed ambitions. But your world was remade 90 years ago, in the delta of the Nile. The great enemy, the Ayyubid Sultanate, was not just defeated, it was supplanted. The Frankish Kingdom of Egypt to the south is not a rival, but a fortress, a seemingly inexhaustible source of gold, grain, and soldiers. The Kingdom of Jerusalem is no longer a precarious coastal strip, a line of castles staring nervously into a hostile hinterland. It is secure. The desert that was once a threat is now a highway, a trade route, connecting you to your powerful southern cousins in Cairo. This security has changed everything. It has allowed the kingdom to grow roots, to sink deep into the ancient soil of the Levant. You see it in the architecture. The new wing of the hospital you are standing in is a marvel of this new world. The arches are pointed, in the Gothic style of France, but the ceilings are intricately tiled in geometric patterns that would be at home in a Damascus mosque, and the cooling systems, wind catchers, and shaded courtyards with flowing water are a brilliant imitation of Persian design, a necessity in this sun-blasted land. You are an apprentice to Brother Antoine, the Hospitaler's chief physician. He is a knight, yes, a man who has taken vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. But his true religion is the art of healing. In the hospital's library, the Latin Bible sits beside the medical canon of Ibn Sina. Avicenna to the west. You learn to set bones using the techniques described by the Andalusian surgeon Al-Zarawi. And you diagnose fevers using the treatises of Galen, not from a clumsy Latin translation, but from the original Greek text brought here from the still thriving libraries of Constantinople. Your patients are a reflection of your city. In the long ward, a knight from Burgundy with a festering lance wound lies next to an Armenian merchant moaning from a kidney stone. In the next bed is a Greek pilgrim who fell from his horse, and across from him is a Jewish scholar from the Galilee, his leg shattered by a runaway cart. You treat them all. Their gold, or lack of it, is of no concern to the order. Their souls are a matter for the priests, but their bodies are a matter for you. And when a wealthy Muslim emir from a nearby town sends a messenger with a heavy purse, asking for a consultation for his ailing wife, Brother Antoine goes. He does not see an infidel, he sees a patient. This is the pragmatism of survival, hardened into the custom of peace. This is the Third Kingdom, not the first tenuous kingdom of Godfrey de Bouillon, which was little more than a string of military garrisons, not the new, powerful kingdom of the Franks in Egypt, which is an occupying power ruling a vast, alien population. Yours is the third way, a mature state where identities are beginning to blur. Your king, Jean II, traces his lineage back to the heroes of the First Crusade, but he governs through a complex web of local vassals, including Maronite Christian barons and even some Bedouin sheikhs who have sworn him fealty. He collects taxes, enforces laws, and ensures the pilgrim roads are safe. The holy purpose remains, but it has been subsumed by the mundane, essential business of governance. The twist, the irony that would enrage the popes of another era, is where this kingdom now turns its face. It does not look to Rome for guidance, or to Paris for culture. It looks east, to Constantinople. Since Pope Innocent III's great détente, the Byzantine Empire has become a trusted, if sometimes difficult, ally. Its fleet helps patrol the coast against pirates. Its merchants are favoured in your ports. And its culture is a beacon of sophisticated, ancient prestige. Young Frankish nobles, sons of the great baronial houses of Ibelin and Montfort, are now sent to the great palace on the Bosphorus to be educated, to learn the subtle arts of diplomacy and administration. They return speaking Greek, their manners polished, their minds sharp, viewing the rough, unlettered knights who still arrive from Europe as little more than useful barbarians. Here lies the tension, the seed of a future conflict. You encounter it one afternoon when a newly arrived knight of the temple, his white mantle still stiff and unnaturally clean, storms into the hospital. He has seen you giving water to a wounded Arab caravan guard, a Muslim who was brought in after a bandit attack. "What is this?" the Templar demands, his French a harsh, guttural bark compared to your softer Levantine accent. "You give comfort to the enemy? This place is a house of God, not a hospice for the heathen." Brother Antoine answers, his voice weary, as if he has had this conversation 1,000 times. "This is a house of healing, brother. Our Lord healed the servant of the centurion, did he not? We follow his example." The Templar spits on the ground. The Lord cast out the money, changes. He did not invite them to dinner. You, Poulain, have gone soft. You have forgotten why we are here. You have been corrupted by the sun and the stench of this land. You see the gulf in his eyes. He sees a world of black and white, of Christian and infidel, of righteous war and damnable peace. You see a world of 1,000 shades of grey, a complex tapestry of peoples and faiths that must be carefully managed, not torn apart. To him, you are a traitor to the cause. To you, he is a dangerous fool, a fanatic who threatens to burn down the house you have all so carefully built. The old crusading fire, the very thing that created this kingdom, is now the greatest threat to its continued existence. It is an idea that has become obsolete, and like all obsolete things, it is becoming dangerous. You turn away from the fuming Templar and go back to your herbs. You crush dittany in a mortar, releasing its pungent, earthy scent. The bells of the sepulchre begin to ring for vespers, their bronze voices intertwining with the fading call of the muezzin. It is the sound of your city, the sound of your world. It is the sound of a peace bought by a victory 90 years ago, a peace so profound, so stable, that it is beginning to forget it was ever at war. Your world is the saddle. It is your cradle, your throne, and it will be your deathbed. Your body is a single sinewy muscle, cured by the wind and the sun, permanently curved to the shape of your horse. You are a scout, an eye for the tumen, one of the 10,000 arrows in the quiver of the great Khan. Your pony is small, shaggy, and tireless, its hooves having trampled the dust of a dozen fallen empires. You have seen the walls of Samarkand fall and the towers of Bukhara burn. You have watered your horse in the Tigris and the Oxus. You have seen kings beg for their lives, and you have felt nothing. The will of the Khan, guided by the eternal blue sky, is the only reality. You now stand on a high pass in the Taurus Mountains, the wind whipping at your deal. Below you, the land changes. The arid, brown plateaus of Anatolia give way to a hazy, greenish coastline. The air is thick with the smell of the sea, a smell you associate with the edge of the world. Your orders, passed down from the Noyan, your general, were simple. Ride south, find the cities of the Franks and the Saracens, measure their strength, and report back. The great westward push of the Mongol nation, the flood that has washed away everything in its path, is poised to spill into this new land. You expect weakness. Your spies have spoken of it for years. These lands are divided, ruled by petty kings who worship their nailed god and fight endlessly among themselves. The great caliph in Baghdad is a poet, not a warlord. The Sultan of the Rum Seljuks, whose lands you just rode through, was a brittle vessel, shattered with a single tap. You expect more of the same. Rich, soft cities ripe for the taking. Your first encounter is with a patrol, 10 of them, clad head to toe in interlocking rings of steel. Their horses are monstrous, towering over your steppe ponies like giants. They do not ride like the Turkish horsemen you are used to, who dance and skirmish. These men move as one, a single beast with 10 lances for teeth. Your arrows. The arrows that have broken the nerve of every army from China to Persia, patter against their shields and armour like hard rain. A few find the gaps, bringing down a horse, a man, but they do not break. They charge. It is not a charge of finesse, but of pure, terrifying weight. You do as you have always done. You feign a retreat, hoping to string them out, to pick them off one by one. They do not take the bait. They advance to a certain point, secure the ground, and halt. A hedgehog of steel daring you to approach. You withdraw, leaving 3 of your comrades dead. They have lost one. It is an unnerving arithmetic. In the weeks that follow, the picture becomes clearer and more disturbing. This is not a land of squabbling princelings. You see the castles, and they defy your understanding of fortification. You have taken the great walled cities of the Khwarezmian Empire. Your Chinese engineers can break any wall, given time. But these are not city walls, designed to protect populations. They are mountains of cut stone, designed for the singular purpose of war. You creep close to one at dusk, a place the locals call Crac des Chevaliers. It sits on its hill like a dragon of grey rock. It is a series of castles within castles, its walls layered and angled to create 100 killing grounds. There are no weaknesses. To take it would require a siege of years and a mountain of your own dead. Your engineers, men who view fortifications with a professional, dispassionate eye, are grim. This one, they say, is the work of devils. And as you scout the frontier, you learn there are more. A chain of them, running down the coast, all garrisoned, all supplied, all watching. This is the first layer of the wall. Captured merchants, their tongues loosened by fear, tell you of the second. This kingdom of the Syrian Franks does not stand alone. It is the northern province of a greater Frankish empire to the south, one based in a land called Misr or Egypt. That kingdom, they whisper, is wealthier than any you have yet encountered. Its river, the Nile, spews forth endless gold and grain. It can raise armies not of 10,000, but of 50,000, and keep them in the field indefinitely. The knights of the Syrian frontier are merely the tip of a very long, very sharp spear. And there is a third layer. To the northwest, across the sea, lies the city of the Romans, Constantinople. It is not, as your intelligence once suggested, a city in chaos, a prize for any passing pirate. It is the heart of a living empire. Its armies are disciplined, its navy commands the sea, and it is in alliance with the Franks. You are in the tent of your Noyen. The felt walls flap in the wind. The air is thick with the smell of fermented mare's milk and boiled mutton. A map, drawn on cured leather, is spread on the floor. It is a map of problems, 3 powerful allied states, forming an unbroken wall of shields from the mountains of Anatolia to the deserts of Sinai. They have professional armies. They have endless money. They have fortifications that mock your siegecraft. And they are united. Not by love your spies make that clear, but by a cold, shared interest in their own survival. They have had 90 years to prepare for you. This is the unforeseen twist. Your people, the Mongol nation, are the most terrifying force on the planet. You have never been stopped. But here you are stopped, not by a single glorious battle like Ain Jalut in another history, but by the sheer, grinding mathematics of attrition. Your Noyen traces a finger on the map. To break this shield wall would require the entire might of the Golden Horde. It would take a decade. The cost in men, in horses, in treasure would be ruinous. And for what? For a string of coastal cities and a river valley, when the entire world lies open to you. Then another scout, a man whose face is chapped raw by a different kind of wind, a northern wind, enters the tent. He has come from the lands across the Great Black Sea. He speaks of a different world, a world of endless, flat grasslands perfect for your cavalry, a world of rich cities, Kiev, Vladimir, Novgorod, protected by wooden walls and ruled by princes who are cousins and mortal enemies. They do not help one another. The fall of one is a source of satisfaction to the others. He speaks of wide rivers that freeze into solid highways in the winter. He speaks of a people who are brave but disorganized, a population that is vast but scattered. He speaks of a land that is ripe. The ethical tension of this moment hangs unseen in the smoky air of the tent. The choice is not a moral one. It is a strategic one. It is the logic of the flood. Water does not waste its energy trying to smash a dam when an open valley lies beside it. The Noyen makes his decision. He points a finger on the map, away from the south, away from the lands of the Franks and the Romans. He points north. You ride north. You turn your back on the sea, on the great stone castles, on the impenetrable shield wall. That campaign is over. It was a failure, a reconnaissance in force that found the enemy too strong, the price of victory too high. Ahead of you lies the endless green ocean of the Pontic-Caspian steppe, the land of the Rus. You do not know these people. You do not hate them. They are simply the path of least resistance. The survival of Constantinople, the prosperity of Jerusalem, the power of Cairo, all of this was paid for. In this moment, in this tent, the bill has come due, and it will be paid by the princes of Kiev and the peasants of Ryazan. You feel the cold northern wind on your face and urge your pony onward. You are the coming storm, and the people of this land have no idea that the dam that should have broken far to their south has held, deflecting the entire apocalypse directly onto them. Your hands smell of turpentine and linseed oil, a fine dusting of lapis lazuli powder. A pigment more precious than gold stains the cuticle of your right thumb. You are in your workshop, a high-ceilinged room in the Philippine Palace, on the outskirts of Constantinople, and the soft northern light filtering through the expensive glass window is perfect for your work. You are not a craftsman. You are a zographos, an artist, but you are also a student of optics, a master of geometry, and a devotee of the philosopher Plato. You are creating a new world on a flat, gessoed panel of linden wood. The panel depicts the Theotokos, the Mother of God, but not in the way your ancestors would have painted her. For 1,000 years, Byzantine art has been a sacred language of symbols. Figures were flat, eternal, floating in a golden, unearthly void. Their expressions were of serene, divine detachment. It was an art of theological truths, not of human realities. But you are painting her as a woman. There is a weight to her body, a sense of muscle and bone beneath the folds of her deep blue robes. The light strikes her cheekbone just so, creating a soft shadow that suggests the curve of her face. The Christ child in her arms is not a miniature, solemn philosopher king. He is a baby, chubby and energetic, his hand reaching for his mother's face with an infant's unthinking affection. And behind them, there is no flat gold leaf. Instead, you have painted a landscape. Through a window, you can see the hills of the Bosphorus, the glint of the sun on the water, the hazy form of a distant cypress tree. You have used the new science of perspective, a rediscovery of principles known to the ancient Greeks, preserved in the texts of Euclid and Ptolemy in the Imperial Library to create the illusion of depth, of a real space inhabited by real people. You are not just conveying a holy truth, you are trying to capture a moment of holy reality. This is the Constantinopolitan dawn, an artistic and intellectual rebirth that, in that other world, would have happened in Florence, in Rome, in Siena. The Italian Renaissance of OTL was a phenomenon born of fragmentation and nostalgia. It was a rediscovery, a desperate attempt by city-states like Florence to reclaim the lost glory of a classical past they knew only from broken statues and half-remembered texts. It was fueled by competition, civic pride, and a flood of refugee Greek scholars fleeing the fall of your city in 1453. But your city never fell. Here, in the year 1430, Constantinople is not a dying ember. It is a bonfire, secure, prosperous, and politically stable under the long-reigning Palaiologos dynasty. It is the undisputed intellectual capital of the world. The chain of classical knowledge was never broken, so there is no need for a nostalgic rebirth. There is only a continuous, accelerating evolution. You do not need to rediscover Plato. You can walk to the university and debate his original texts with men who have been studying them in an unbroken lineage for 1,000 years. Your patron, the despot Theodore, the emperor's younger brother, is a man who embodies this new age. He does not spend his fortune on armies because the borders are secure. The Frankish Kingdom of Egypt handles the southern frontier. The Kingdom of Jerusalem holds the Levant, and the Mongol Golden Horde, having shattered the Russian states, is now a trading partner, not a threat. The Ottomans in Anatolia are a persistent nuisance, but they are contained, a regional power fighting a two-front war against you and the Persians to the east. So Theodore spends his money on you, on poets who are experimenting with vernacular Greek, on philosophers who are challenging the sterile dogmatism of the Church, on astronomers who are building a new observatory in Trebizond to chart the stars with unprecedented accuracy, using brass instruments based on the designs of the ancient masters in Alexandria. The unexpected twist is the fate of Italy. Without the constant influx of Byzantine scholars, without the shock and shame of Constantinople's fall to spur them, the Italian city-states remain commercially powerful, but culturally provincial. Venice is a city of merchants, not artists, its wealth pouring into its navy to protect its Egyptian monopoly. Genoa is obsessed with its new Atlantic empire in Africa. Florence is a prosperous hub for wool and banking, but its art remains stubbornly Gothic, beautiful but archaic, commissioned by a church whose theological authority, bolstered by the success of the Fourth Crusade, has never been seriously challenged. The Italian Renaissance is happening, yes, but it is a slower, more cautious affair, a flickering candle next to the sun of your Constantinopolitan dawn. Their artists are still painting stiff, symbolic saints on golden backgrounds while you are painting human beings in a real world. Here you find the ethical tension of this golden age. Your art, this new humanistic realism, is beginning to attract the wrong kind of attention. You hear the whispers in the halls of the great palace and the cells of the monasteries on Mount Athos. The zealots, a faction of conservative monks and clerics, see your work not as a celebration of God's creation, but as a blasphemy. An old monk, his face a mask of wrinkled parchment, confronts you in your workshop. He points a trembling finger at your panel of the Theotokos. "This is an idol," he hisses, his voice dry as dust. "You have taken the Queen of Heaven and made her a peasant girl from Galilee. You have taken the incarnate Word and made him a squirming child. You have replaced the divine mystery with cheap human sentiment. This is the sin of the Latins, to drag God down to their own filthy, human level. You try to explain. You speak of the beauty of the human form as a reflection of the divine, of understanding God's world as a way of understanding God. You quote the Neoplatonists. He is not listening. He sees only the seductive, dangerous allure of the physical world. He sees a path that leads away from heaven and toward the flesh. The Latins worship a corpse on a cross, he says with utter contempt. We worship the resurrected Christ, the Pantocrator, the ruler of all. You are painting their corpse. This is not our faith. This is heresy. The conflict is not merely aesthetic. It is a battle for the soul of your civilization. For 1,000 years, the Orthodox faith has been the bedrock of the empire. It is mystical, transcendent, and deeply suspicious of the rational, human-centered world that the ancient pagan Greeks celebrated and that you are now, cautiously, beginning to explore again. The Zealots believe the empire's strength comes from its unwavering piety, its preservation of the sacred tradition. You and your patron believe its future lies in embracing change, in unleashing the power of human reason and creativity that has been dormant for a millennium. You are not just painting a picture, you are firing a shot in a cultural war. The monk's accusation hangs in the air, smelling of incense and old fears. Heresy. It is the ugliest word in your language. It is a word that can get a man blinded, or exiled, or worse. The survival of your city has preserved not only the light of classical knowledge, but also the deep, unyielding power of its ancient faith. And now, for the first time, those two forces, which have coexisted for centuries, are beginning to pull apart. The dawn you are painting is beautiful, but every dawn casts a shadow, and you can feel it lengthening behind you. The dust never settles. It is the first and last thing you learn in Anatolia. It coats your tongue, grinds in your teeth, and works its way into the links of your mail. You are an Akunchi, a raider, a scout for the House of Osman. Your life is a blur of horseflesh, drawn bowstrings, and the thrill of the charge. For generations, your people have been the sword of Islam, pushing against the crumbling frontier of the Romans. You have fed on their weakness, taken their cities, and dreamed of the day when the banner of the Prophet would fly from the walls of their golden city, Constantinople. But the dream is dying. It is dying in the dust of this endless, grinding, unwinnable war. You stand on a ridge overlooking the Byzantine fortress of Dorylaeum. In the history that was erased, this was a forgotten ruin, a footnote in the chronicles of the First Crusade. In your world, it is a monster of modern military engineering. Its stone walls are low and thick, designed to absorb the impact of cannonballs. Great, star-shaped bastions jut out, allowing the defenders to lay down overlapping fields of fire. You see the glint of their cannons, cast in the foundries of Constantinople, serviced by Frankish engineers from the Crusade estates. Every time you lay siege to one of these fortresses, the story is the same. You wear yourselves out against the walls, and then a Byzantine field army, crisp, professional and well-drilled, marches out from a nearby city and attacks your rear. Your Sultan Murad II is a great warrior, a lion of a man. But he is a lion trapped in a cage. To the west is the unbreachable wall of Byzantine Thrace, and the combined fleets of Constantinople and Venice that control the sea. To the south, the stable, wealthy Frankish kingdoms of Jerusalem and Egypt offer no openings, no weaknesses to exploit. The path of least resistance, the path of Gaza, the holy war that is the very reason for your state's existence, is blocked. The Ottoman state was born to expand. It is a military machine, fueled by conquest, land grants to its soldiers, and the Devshirme, the levy of Christian boys who are converted and trained to become the Sultan's elite Janissary infantry. But when the machine cannot move forward, it begins to grind its own gears. The Janissaries in the capital, Edirne, grow restless. The local Turkish beys, the tribal lords who submitted to your grandfather's rule, begin to whisper of rebellion, of returning to the old ways. The state is having a crisis of purpose. Today, you have returned from a long raid, but you did not ride west. You rode east. The Sultan has made a decision that feels like a betrayal of your entire history. If the path to the west is closed, he will turn east. You are no longer fighting the Christian Rum. You are fighting the Turkoman tribes of the Karamanid Emirate. You are fighting other Muslims. In the Sultan's tent, the mood is tense. The old Ghazi warriors, men who have fought the Byzantines their whole lives, are silent and grim. This is not the war they signed up for. But the Janissary commanders and the court viziers, men of cold calculation, see the logic. The Karamanids are weak. Beyond them lies Persia, ruled by the fractured successor states of the Mongol Ilkhanate. Beyond that, the ancient Silk Road, a river of wealth waiting to be dammed and diverted. The Sultan is pivoting. He is attempting to transform the Ottoman enterprise from a holy war on the edge of Christendom into a traditional Islamic empire, a contender for the leadership of the entire Muslim world. This is the great, unforeseen twist. The resilience of the Byzantine Empire has not destroyed the Ottomans. It has contained them, and, in doing so, has forced them to change their very nature. Instead of becoming a European empire with its capital in Constantinople, they are being pushed to become a great Middle Eastern power, with their gaze fixed on Tabriz, Baghdad, and Samarkand. Your raid was a success. You burned Karamanid villages, drove off their sheep, and brought back a string of sullen, defeated prisoners. But as you look at them, you do not feel the righteous thrill of victory over the infidel. They are Turks, like you. They speak your language. They pray to the same God. Your Imam preaches that this is a just war, a war to punish heretics and bring unity to the House of Islam. It feels like a lie cooked up by politicians. The ethical tension of this new reality is sharp and personal. You have been raised to believe that the highest calling is to die in battle against the enemies of the faith. But who is the enemy now? The Byzantine soldier on the wall of Dorylaeum, who is at least an honest and predictable foe, or the Karamanid horseman whose village you just destroyed, who calls you a traitor and a brother killer with his dying breath. This eastward turn has another, stranger consequence. It brings you into a new world of conflict and culture. You capture a Persian caravan, and among the goods, you find not just silks and spices, but books. Books of poetry by Hafez and Sadi, written in a language so beautiful it makes your own rough Turkish feel like the grunting of animals. You find philosophical treatises that debate the nature of God, with a subtlety that makes your own clerics seem like simple-minded schoolboys. You encounter Shia Muslims for the first time, and their passionate, sorrowful faith is both alluring and deeply disturbing to your Sunni certainties. The Ottoman state begins to change, to absorb these new influences. The court in Edirne, once a Spartan military camp, begins to patronize Persian poets. The architecture of your new mosques begins to incorporate the elegant tilework and soaring domes of Isfahan. Your identity, once forged in the simple black and white crucible of the Byzantine frontier, is becoming more complex, more Persianized, more civilized. You are becoming less like the wolf at the door of Europe, and more like the inheritors of the ancient empires of the East. One evening, you are cleaning your sword by the fire, the steel reflecting the flames. An old Ghazi, a man who rode with the Sultan's father, sits beside you. He has not spoken for hours. "I remember," he says, his voice raspy, "when we took Gallipoli. We crossed the sea. We could smell the great city on the wind. It felt like destiny. We were God's sword, and the world was our apple." He spits into the fire. "Now we fight our own kin for control of some dusty caravan stop. The poets in the Sultan's tent sing in a language I do not understand. They sing of wine and boys. What happened to us?" You have no answer. You look at your sword. It is the same sword, but the world it cuts through has changed. You are a warrior of the frontier, but the frontier has moved. It is no longer a clear line between two faiths. It is a messy, confusing, and fratricidal struggle for the soul of Islam. And you are no longer sure which side you are on. The smell of the sea is different here. It is not the familiar scent of the Mediterranean, sharp with salt and human endeavour. This is a wilder, deeper smell of kelp and strange fish, carried on winds that roar, not whisper. You stand on the pitching deck of the San Giorgio, a new kind of ship, unlike any built before. Her high castle-like forecastle and stern castle rise against the angry grey sky, her single massive mast straining under a vast square sail, the canvas stiff and heavy with salt spray. The timbers groan, the ropes sing a dirge, and the sun, when it appears, is a pale, indifferent disk. You are off the coast of a vast, unknown land, and it is the year 1380. Your name is Bartolomeo Salvatico, a Genoese captain. But you are more than that. You are a pioneer, a madman, a man who has sailed off the edge of every map known to Christendom. For the past 70 years, since the great turning point when the Venetian grip on the east grew too tight, your city, Genoa, has been pouring its lifeblood into this gamble. You have not just sent ships. You have invested generations of human capital, of sailors and cartographers, of shipwrights and financiers. It has been a slow, brutal process of trial and error. Your uncle died of fever on the shores of what is now called the Slave Coast. Your father lost a fleet to a hurricane off the Canaries. The sea is a merciless mistress. But you have persisted, because you had to. In the history you remember, the Portuguese, driven by a similar thirst for an alternative to the Venetian Ottoman monopoly on Eastern goods, would begin their slow, painstaking exploration down the African coast in the early 15th century. Henry the Navigator would become a legend. But here, they are still a small, relatively insignificant kingdom, their ambitions focused on consolidating their Iberian peninsula. They have no driving, existential threat like the one that gripped Genoa. You are the vanguard. The first ships that returned from these southern voyages, a century and a half ago, brought back not just gold and ivory, but knowledge. Knowledge of currents, of wind patterns, of the terrifying, beautiful vastness of the Atlantic. Your cartographers, men like the Pisano brothers, have created entirely new maps, not of mythical beasts and biblical lands, but of accurate coastlines and measured latitudes. This is the unexpected twist. The Genoese, not the Portuguese, are the masters of oceanic navigation, forced by economic necessity to invent a new maritime science. You are searching for the mouth of a great river, a river the locals call the Niger. You have traded for gold dust in the shallow harbours of what your maps now call the Gold Coast, but your goal is more ambitious. To find the source, to penetrate inland, to tap directly into the legendary wealth of the Mali Empire, the source of half the gold that flows into Europe. Then, through the mist, you see it. A break in the dense green jungle that lines the coast. Not a river mouth, but an estuary, wide as a lake, leading inland. The river's current is strong, pushing out against the incoming tide. This is it. This is the key. Your ship's anchor in the deeper water. Smaller, shallow-drafted pinnaces are launched. You lead a party up the river. The air immediately grows heavy, humid, thick with the scent of unknown flowers and the buzz of unseen insects. The jungle presses in on all sides, a wall of living green unlike anything you have ever seen. You are deep in the heart of a continent that Europe barely knows exists. Days turn into weeks. You barter with local tribes, exchanging your iron goods, your cloth, your glass beads for food, for information. You learn new languages, a smattering of Mandinka and Fulani, through gestures and desperate charades. You are no longer just a captain. You are an ambassador, a negotiator, a pioneer. And then, finally, you reach it. The city of Genoa. Not a mud brick village, but a thriving, walled city of thousands, its mosques and houses built of a strange, baked red earth. A true city, with markets teeming with goods, with scholars and merchants, with a social order that is as complex and ancient as any in Europe. And gold. Gold dust in leather pouches, in small, intricate ornaments, in the very riverbed. You establish a trading post, a small fortified factory on the riverbank, staffed by a dozen of your hardiest men. It will be the first European permanent settlement in West Africa, 100 years before the Portuguese built Elmina. The river, not the desert, will now be the highway of West African gold to Europe. The ethical tension of your enterprise becomes immediately clear. You are a Christian. You attend Mass every Sunday aboard the San Giorgio. You believe in God, in the sanctity of human life. Yet, to secure the gold, to establish your factory, you must do things that stain your soul. The local chiefs, eager for your iron weapons and your fine cloth, are quick to offer you labourers, men and women from rival tribes captured in small wars, branded and brought to your factory in chains. You rationalise it. They are already slaves. You are merely buying them. You tell yourself that by taking them, you are saving them from a worse fate. And they are needed on your family's sugar plantations on the Cape Verde Islands. Places your ships discovered on their way south. Places where the land is fertile, but the labour is scarce. You walk through the slave market in Genoa, the air thick with sweat and despair. You see a young woman, no older than your own daughter, her eyes wide with terror. She is strong, well built. She will fetch a good price. You bargain, coldly, calculating the cost of her passage against the potential yield of sugarcane. You tell yourself this is simply the way of the world. Everyone has slaves. The Arabs trade them. The local kings trade them. You are merely participating in an existing system. But in your gut, you feel the chill of a new and terrible invention. This is not the old slavery of the Mediterranean, where a man might be a slave for a debt, for a conquest, for a few years, before becoming a freedman, a Christian, a member of society. This is a new kind of slavery, an industrial slavery, a system driven by the insatiable European demand for commodities, for sugar, for gold. for things that require endless, brutal labour. And you, Bartolomeo Salvatico, a man who thought he was merely finding a new trade route, are laying the foundation for it. You sign the purchase order, your quill scratching on the parchment. Another 20 souls for the next outbound ship. The ink dries, and a world yet to be discovered, a continent far across the Atlantic, will one day curse your name and the names of your Genoese brethren. The quest for gold, born of Venetian dominance, has unleashed a demon, and you are holding its leash. You are Cardinal Thomas Wolsey, Lord Chancellor of England, Archbishop of York, and papal legate later. Power radiates from you like heat from a furnace. You are in your audience chamber at Hampton Court, a palace whose splendour is designed to rival, and perhaps even surpass, that of your king, Henry VIII. The tapestries are from Flanders, the wine is from Gascony, and the problem on your desk is from Wittenberg. It is a slim volume, poorly printed on cheap paper, written in a German as coarse and belligerent as the man who penned it. Martin Luther, a German monk of no particular importance, until he started nailing his theses to church doors and, more dangerously, publishing pamphlets that spread like wildfire through the printing presses of the Holy Roman Empire. He rants about indulgences, about salvation by faith alone, about the priesthood of all believers. He calls the Pope the Antichrist. In the history that almost was, this man's angry words would ignite a revolution. He would tap into a deep well of resentment against a papacy seen as corrupt, worldly, and distant. He would be protected by German princes eager to seize church lands and assert their independence from the emperor. His ideas would shatter the unity of Western Christendom, plunging Europe into a century of religious warfare and giving birth to Protestantism. But your world is different. The papacy you serve is not the same institution that Luther of that other world railed against. It is not a den of iniquity, ruled by the decadent Borgias or the warrior Pope Julius II. The success of the Fourth Crusade 3 centuries ago changed everything. It gave the papacy a surge of prestige and, more importantly, a newfound political and military confidence. The popes of the 13th and 14th centuries were not just spiritual leaders. They were statesmen who commanded real power, arbitrating disputes between kings and directing the flow of immense resources toward the defense and expansion of the Crusader states. When challenges arose, the Cathars in France, the Fraticelli in Italy, the Lollards in your own England, your predecessors did not just debate them, they crushed them. They used the full weight of their authority, backed by the implicit threat of a crusade, to enforce doctrinal unity. The Inquisition was not a desperate reactive measure. It was a confident, proactive tool of state security. As a result, the papacy of your day, the early 16th century, is a more centralized, more disciplined, and far more politically formidable institution. It is, in essence, the spiritual arm of a functioning international order. You read Luther's tract, and you are not frightened. You are annoyed. It feels like a provincial squabble, a tempest in a German beer stein. You see his arguments not as a profound theological challenge, but as a breach of discipline, an act of insubordination. A legate from Rome, Cardinal Cajetan, is already in Augsburg, meeting with this Luther. In the other history, that meeting was a disaster. Cajetan was arrogant, Luther was defiant, and the German princes shielded the rebel. Here, the dynamic is entirely different. Cajetan does not arrive as a mere theologian. He arrives as an ambassador of a superpower. He does not just carry bulls of excommunication, he carries letters to the Fugger bankers, threatening to move papal financial operations to their Genoese rivals. He reminds the Emperor Charles V that the loyalty of the Frankish armies in the east, a crucial counterweight to Ottoman power, is contingent on the emperor's piety and obedience. This is the unexpected twist. The papacy's strength does not prevent dissent, it changes the nature of the dissent. Luther is not allowed to become a popular hero. He is isolated. The German princes, while greedy for church lands, are terrified of papal retribution. They have seen what happens to those who defy Rome. They have seen entire kingdoms placed under interdict, their trade strangled, their rulers excommunicated and deposed. They will not risk their necks for an obscure monk. Luther is summoned to Rome. He is offered a choice: recant or be tried for heresy. He refuses. His trial is swift. He is condemned, handed over to the secular authorities, and burned at the stake in the Campo de' Fiori. There are riots in Saxony. A few of his followers are martyred. The movement is driven underground, where it festers as a resentful, persecuted cult. There is no Protestant Reformation. There is only the failed Lutheran heresy. This brings you to the ethical tension of your world. Unity has been preserved, but at what cost? The problems Luther identified, the corruption, the sale of indulgences, the spiritual complacency were real. In the other timeline, the Reformation, for all its bloodshed and chaos, forced the Catholic Church to confront its own failings, to reform itself from within during the Counter-Reformation. Your church has never faced such a challenge. It has never had to look in the mirror. It has confused unity with health. The problem you are dealing with today is a perfect example of this. Your king, Henry, wants a divorce. His wife, Catherine of Aragon, has failed to produce a male heir. He wants to marry his mistress, Anne Boleyn. In the other history, the Pope's refusal, driven by fear of Catherine's nephew, the Emperor Charles V, would lead Henry to break with Rome and declare himself the head of the Church in England. But in your world, the Pope does not fear the Emperor. The Pope is, in many ways, stronger than the Emperor. The Pope's refusal is not a matter of political cowardice, but of doctrinal certainty. The sacrament of marriage is indissoluble. The law is the law. There will be no exceptions, especially not for a king whose lusts are so transparent. You have been working for months to find a solution, a legal loophole, a canonical workaround. You have failed. The message from Rome is absolute. Now you must go to Henry and tell him. You know what he will do. He is a man of immense pride and dangerous ambition. He will not accept this denial of his will. He cannot fight the Pope. Rome is too strong, so he will do something else. He will not create a new theology like Luther. He will simply declare that the Church in England is no longer the Church of Rome. He will engineer a national schism. He will not change the Mass. He will not tear down the monasteries, not at first anyway. He will simply appoint his own bishops, control his own ecclesiastical courts, and grant himself his own divorce. It will be a political break, not a theological one. A schism, not a reformation. You see the future spooling out. England will become a renegade state, a pariah in Catholic Europe. France, ever opportunistic, might follow suit, creating a Gallican church under the authority of its own king. The Spanish might do the same. The seamless garment of Christendom will not be torn in half, as in the Reformation. It will be eaten away by a series of nationalistic moths, each state asserting its own control over its piece of the universal church. You have avoided the fire of Reformation, only to be consumed by the slow rot of state control. The church will survive, but it will be a diminished thing, a federation of national institutions, each beholden to its own king. You pick up your staff, your knuckles white. You have a king to inform and a schism to manage. The unity preserved by fire 3 centuries ago is now unravelling, thread by thread. Your name is not your own. You were born Alton, a Kipchak boy on the vast, windy steppes north of the Black Sea. You remember the smell of horse sweat and the taste of your mother's air rag. You remember the sky, a dome so vast it humbled the soul. That was a lifetime ago. Today, your name is Saif al-Din Qutuz, Sword of the Faith, and the only sky you see is the sliver of blue framed by the high walls of a training barracks in Damascus. You are a Mamluk, a slave, and you are the most dangerous man in the city. The institution of the Mamluks was a pillar of the Ayyubid Sultanate. They were slave soldiers, purchased as boys from the hardy tribes of the Caucasus and the Eurasian steppe. They were cut off from all family ties, converted to Islam, and subjected to a brutal, all-consuming training regimen. They were taught to be the finest cavalrymen on earth, bound by an unbreakable loyalty, not to a king or a country, but to their comrades in the barracks and the master who owned them. They were the ultimate military weapon. In the history that was supposed to be, your brothers in arms would have seized power in Cairo in 1250. After shattering a crusade led by the French King Louis IX, they would have murdered the last Ayyubid Sultan and established their own Mamluk Sultanate. They would have become the masters of Egypt and Syria, the unyielding defenders of Islam, who would defeat the Mongols at Ain Jalut and finally drive the Crusaders from the Levant. They would have been kings. But the Fourth Crusade did not fail. It did not land in Damietta to be defeated by your predecessors. It landed in Alexandria and succeeded. The Ayyubid Sultanate was decapitated in 1204, its heartland torn out, its power base destroyed. There was no Ayyubid dynasty for your caste to inherit. There was no Egypt to rule. The Frankish Kingdom of Egypt, with its own feudal military structure, had no need for a massive, institutionalized corps of slave soldiers. So, the Mamluks were broken, shattered, sold off in batches to the highest bidders. Your caste became unmoored, a weapon disconnected from the hand that forged it. You became the ultimate mercenaries. Landless swords. This is the unforeseen twist. Denied a kingdom of your own, you became the arbiters of everyone else's. Your Hushdashiyya, the bond of loyalty to your fellow Mamluks, became your only nation. You are a stateless military elite, a river of violence, flowing to wherever the pay is best, and the fighting is hardest. You, Qutuz, were purchased by the Seljuk Sultan of Rum. You fought for him against the Byzantines and his own rebellious Turkish beys. When he failed to pay you, you and your 500 comrades simply left, taking the best of his horses and weapons with you, and offered your services to the Persian Shah. You helped him crush a rebellion in Khorasan. Now, you are in the employ of the Emir of Damascus, a petty Ayyubid remnant who dreams of reclaiming his family's lost glory. He pays you in gold, in land, in respect. He knows he rules only because you allow him to. His own soldiers are a poorly trained militia. You are a scalpel in a world of clumsy axes. Your life is one of stark contrasts. In the barracks, you live a life of monastic simplicity. You train from dawn until dusk, practicing the arts of the Furusiyya horsemanship, archery, lance work, with a devotion that is a form of prayer. Your bond with your comrades is absolute. You would die for the man who sleeps on the mat next to you without a second thought. But when the emir holds court, you are transformed. You wear silks from China. Your dagger is inlaid with turquoise, and you are served the finest food. You are a slave who is more powerful than any free man in the city. The ethical tension of your existence is that you have no allegiance to anything but your own core. You are a Muslim, yes, but your faith is one of discipline and fatalism, not of law or community. You have seen Sunnis, Shias, and Ismailis kill each other with a ferocity that makes the Frankish infidels seem almost reasonable. You fight for the man who pays you, regardless of his piety or his politics. You are the ultimate pragmatists in an age of faith. You have been hired to defend Damascus from its rivals. But every man in the city, from the emir in his palace to the baker in his shop, knows that if the emir of Aleppo offered you a better price, you would burn Damascus to the ground without a moment's hesitation. You are the city's protectors and its most terrifying threat. You are a sword with no hand to guide it, save for the hand that holds the purse. Today, a new offer has arrived. It is not from another Muslim princeling. The messenger is a Frank, a knight of the Order of St. John from the Kingdom of Jerusalem. His Arabic is surprisingly fluent, and his manner is direct. His king has a problem. A new Mongol Khan, a man named Bark, has consolidated his power in the north. He is a Muslim, unlike his predecessors, but his Islam is the rough faith of the steppes, and he has allied himself with the resurgent Seljuks in Anatolia. They are planning a joint attack on the Byzantine Empire's eastern frontier. The Byzantines and the Crusader states are allies, bound by a century of mutual interest. The Franks want to hire you to ride north, not as a main army, but as a devastating raiding force, to strike at the Seljuk heartlands while their army is engaged with the Byzantines. The offer is staggering. A mountain of gold, paid in advance. A grant of land in the fertile Bakar Valley. Preferential trade status for any Mamluk who wishes to become a merchant. You gather the Council of Beys, the leaders of your Mamluk faction. The debate is heated. To fight for the infidel against a fellow Muslim, a sultan no less. It feels like a betrayal of your very identity. But the older Beys, men who remember the lean years after the fall of Egypt, are more practical. What is a sultan? One of them, a grizzled veteran named Baybars, growls. A man who sits on a cushion and grows fat while we bleed for him. The Franks pay in gold, not promises. The Seljuks are weak. This is good business. You, Kutus, must make the decision. You are the commander. You look at the faces of your men. You see the hunger in their eyes. Not for food, but for purpose. For the chaos of a good war. You were forged to be a weapon against the Crusades. The irony is so profound it borders on blasphemy. The most elite fighting force in the Muslim world is about to become the sword of the Crusader kingdoms. We accept, you say, your voice flat. Tell your king to have his gold ready. We ride in a week. You are the landless swords. You serve no cause, no god, no king but your own. You are the ultimate consequence of a crusade that succeeded too well, a free-floating cancer in the body politic of the Near East, and you are about to be unleashed. You do not believe in God, not the bearded Pantocrator of the Orthodox priests, nor the crucified carpenter of the Latins, nor the abstract Allah of the Saracens. Your God is the Logos, the underlying principle of reason that governs the cosmos. Your saints are Euclid, Archimedes, and Aristotle. Your cathedral is the Mouseion of Constantinople, the great university and library complex that has been the flickering candle of rational thought for over 1,000 years. Your name is John Philoponus. You have taken the name of the great Alexandrian philosopher of the 6th century as a mark of your devotion, and you are about to commit an act of intellectual treason. In your hand, you hold 2 spheres. One is bronze, heavy and dense. The other is wood, of the exact same size but much lighter. You stand at the top of the Column of Constantine, the porphyry pillar that has stood in the heart of the city since its founding. Below you, the Forum spreads out, a bustling hive of citizens and merchants. A small crowd has gathered, mostly your students from the university, their faces a mixture of excitement and apprehension. For nearly 2,000 years, the world has believed the words of Aristotle. And Aristotle wrote, with the unshakable authority of a prophet, that heavier objects fall faster than lighter ones. It is a statement that seems obvious, intuitive, correct. It has been repeated in lecture halls and monasteries for 60 generations, a cornerstone of the physical understanding of the universe. To question it is not just to question a philosopher, it is to question the very fabric of received wisdom. In the world that was averted, this experiment, or one very like it, would be performed by a man named Galileo Galilei in Pisa, almost 200 years from now, in the late 16th century. Galileo's experiment would be a symbolic moment, the firing of a starting gun for the scientific revolution. It would be an act of rebellion against a fossilized scholastic tradition, a tradition that valued ancient authority over empirical evidence. But your world's intellectual journey has been different. The thread of Hellenistic science, the practical, empirical, and mathematical tradition of Alexandria and Athens was never completely severed. While the Latin West spent centuries painstakingly reassembling a fragmented Aristotle, treating his works as a quasi-religious text, your civilization has been living with him. You have the complete works, the commentaries, the critiques. You have his rivals, the atomists, the Stoics. To you, Aristotle is not a holy prophet. He is a brilliant, and sometimes brilliantly wrong, old Greek. The Constantinopolitan dawn of the last century was not just an artistic renaissance. It was a scientific one, with the security and prosperity brought by the new geopolitical reality. Scholars at the Mausion began to turn their attention from theology and rhetoric to the physical world. They unearthed and re-examined the works of the great Alexandrian engineers like Hero and Ctesibius, men who built steam engines and complex automata 1,000 years before your time. They were not just preserving knowledge, they were beginning to build upon it. This is the unbroken thread of Hellas. You were a student of Gemistus Pletho, the great Platonist philosopher who argued that the only way to save the empire was to abandon the deadening superstitions of Christianity and embrace a new religion of pure reason. Pletho was condemned as a heretic. His books burned. But his ideas infected a generation of thinkers, including you. You have taken his call for a return to reason and applied it to the natural world. You have read the works of the first John Philoponus, the 6th century Christian Neoplatonist who dared to critique Aristotle's theory of motion. He argued, based on logic alone, that Aristotle must be wrong. He proposed a theory of impetus, an internal motive force that keeps an object in motion. It was a revolutionary idea, but it remained a purely philosophical argument, a thought experiment. You are about to take it a step further. You are not just going to argue, you are going to test. This is the great leap, the movement from scholastic debate to empirical science. This is the ethical tension of your work. The Church, both Orthodox and the now cooperative Catholic, has built a magnificent theological edifice on the foundations of Aristotelian physics. The prime mover, the spheres of the cosmos, the distinction between the corruptible earthly realm and the perfect, unchanging heavens, all of it is intertwined with Aristotle. To pull a single thread is to risk unraveling the entire tapestry. The zealot monks who condemned the new art of your grandfathers now have their sights on the new science. They call you and your students the soulless men, atheists who seek to replace God with gears and numbers. They are not entirely wrong. You do seek to explain the world without recourse to divine intervention. You see the universe not as a divine mystery, but as a machine, a complex but ultimately understandable mechanism governed by rational laws. The unexpected twist is the source of your funding. Your patron is not a liberal-minded philosopher prince. It is the imperial armory. The Stratopedarch, the commander of the emperor's armies, is a man of blunt practicality. He does not care about Aristotle. He cares about the trajectory of cannonballs. The new Byzantine army, facing increasingly sophisticated Ottoman and Persian forces, needs better artillery. They need to know how far a stone ball of a certain weight will fly when launched from a cannon with a certain amount of powder. They need tables, calculations, a science of ballistics. And for that, They need you. You, the heretic. Your research into motion, your experiments with pendulums and inclined planes, are not idle philosophical pursuits. They are military research. You are laying the foundations of classical mechanics, not for the glory of God or the enlightenment of mankind, but to build a better cannon. You look down at the crowd. Your student, Bessarion, gives you a nervous nod. You take a deep breath. You hold the bronze sphere and the wooden sphere out at arm's length over the edge of the column. You can feel the weight of 2,000 years of certainty in your hands. You let go. For a fraction of a second, they hang in the air. Then they fall. Together, not side by side in perfect unison, for the wind catches the lighter wooden ball, but it is clear, undeniable to any observer, that they are accelerating at the same rate. They hit the paving stones of the forum at almost the exact same instant. The bronze ball with a loud crack, the wooden one with a dull thud. A gasp goes through the crowd. A sound of a world being remade. Your students begin to cheer. Others just stare, their minds struggling to reconcile what they have just seen with what they have always been told is true. You have not just proven a scientific principle. You have demonstrated a new method, a new way of knowing. You have shown that the truth is not to be found in an ancient book, but in the world itself, waiting to be questioned. The scientific revolution has just begun, not in Pisa or Padua, but here, in the heart of the 1,000-year-old Roman Empire. It is a revolution funded by the army, despised by the church, and it is about to change the world more profoundly than any crusade or conquest ever could. The snow in your beard has frozen into tiny crystals of ice. You pull the rough wolf fur collar of your coat tighter around your neck, but the wind finds the gaps. A physical thing with teeth of cold. You stand on the half-finished walls of the new Kremlin in Moscow, and you look out over a city of wood and fear. It is the winter of 1480, and you are Ivan III, Grand Prince of Moscow. But the title feels hollow, a bitter joke. In that other history, this is your moment of triumph. This is the year you stand on the Ugra River, facing down the army of the Golden Horde. And in a tense, bloodless confrontation, you end 2.5 centuries of Mongol domination. This is the year Russia is born, when Moscow begins its incredible, explosive expansion, its gathering of the Russian lands. You would go on to call yourself Tsar, Caesar, and style Moscow as the Third Rome, the heir to the fallen city of Constantinople, the new center of the Orthodox world. But in your world, none of this has happened. The shield wall held, the Mongol storm, which should have spent its fury in the deserts of Syria and the mountains of Anatolia, was deflected north, and it fell upon your ancestors with the force of a divine punishment. The Kievan Rus' was not just conquered, it was annihilated. Its cities were burned, its princes slaughtered, its people scattered or enslaved. The Mongol yoke was not a period of distant tributary overlordship. It was a brutal, direct occupation that lasted for a century, followed by another century of dominance by a powerful, centralized golden horde that never fractured as deeply as it did in the other timeline. Your Rome, the Second Rome, never fell. Constantinople stands, more glorious than ever. You receive dispatches from your ambassador there, and they read like fables. He speaks of the emperor's court, of mechanical lions that roar, of philosophers who measure the stars, of artists who paint with light itself. He sends you gifts. A book of Greek geometry you cannot read, a silk robe too fine to wear in your drafty wooden palace. To you, Constantinople is not a hallowed memory to be avenged. It is a living, breathing, and impossibly sophisticated older brother. It is a constant reminder of your own poverty, your own backwardness. You are not the Third Rome. You are a grimy provincial outpost on the frozen edge of civilization. Your orthodoxy, the faith that should be your source of strength and identity, feels different too. It is a faith of survivors. It is grim, mystical, and deeply suspicious of the worldly, philosophical Christianity that seems to be flourishing in Constantinople. Your priests preach of apocalypse and endurance, of the holiness of suffering. They see the worldly success of the Greeks and Franks as a sign of spiritual corruption, the temptation of the devil. Your faith is a shell you have grown to protect you from a hostile world, hard and unyielding. This is the unforeseen twist of your reality. The survival of Byzantium has smothered the Russian dream in its cradle. Your ambition is not to build a new Rome, but simply to survive. You are not gathering the Russian lands. You are desperately trying to hold on to your own small principality. Squeezed between the powerful horde to the east, the aggressive Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth to the west, and the mercantile Republic of Novgorod to the north, which has grown rich trading furs with the Genoese. You look down from the walls at your army. It is not the proud, unified host that stood on the Ugra. It is a sullen, motley collection of boyars and their retainers, each one a petty king on his own land, each one resentful of your authority. They are brave, yes, but they are not a modern army. They fight with the tactics of their grandfathers. The ethical tension of your reign is the choice you must make to forge a state. You have seen what works. You have seen it in the horde. You admire them with a fear that is close to reverence. Their power comes from a single, unquestioned will, from absolute obedience, from ruthlessness, to save your people, to create a Russia that can stand on its own. You must become what you hate. You must become the Khan. You have already begun. You have established the Oprichnina, a personal guard of black-clad riders who owe their loyalty only to you. They are your terror weapon, your tool for breaking the power of the boyars. They ride across the land, confiscating estates, executing traitors, real and imagined. You are creating a new kind of state, a state built not on feudal contract or divine right, but on service and fear. You are turning your people, your free-spirited, anarchic people, into cogs in a machine of state power. You are burning down the old Russia of warring princes to clear the ground for a new Russia of absolute autocracy. Your wife, Sophia, a niece of the last Byzantine emperor, encourages you. She came from Constantinople, and she despises the crudeness of your court, the insolence of your boyars. A ruler is not a first among equals, she whispers to you at night. A ruler is an icon of God on earth. His will is absolute. She fills your head with the theory of Byzantine autocracy, but you lack the 1,000-year-old bureaucracy, the sophisticated legal system, the deep reserves of wealth and culture that make it work. All you have is the whip. You are at a crossroads. You can continue as you are, a weak prince among many, and watch your lands be swallowed by your neighbors. Or you can become a monster, a tyrant in the Mongol style, and through sheer force of will, hammer your people into a nation. You are choosing to be the monster, and you tell yourself it is for their own good. A messenger arrives, his horse steaming in the cold air. He brings news from the south. The Khan of the Great Horde is on the move. He is not coming for you. He is leading his main army to raid the rich Genoese trading posts on the Black Sea coast. He is leaving only a small covering force on your border. This is your chance, the one you have been praying for. A moment of weakness. You can gather your army, march to the border, and perhaps win a small, symbolic victory. A skirmish that you can portray as a great liberation. You turn to your general, a hard-faced boyar you do not trust. "Call the banners," you say, your voice hoarse. "We march. You will go to the Ugra, or a river like it. You may even win, but it will not be the birth of an empire. It will be the desperate gamble of a provincial survivor. You are not the heir of Rome. You are the student of the horde, and the state you are building in the snows of Muscovy will reflect its true teacher, harsh, centralized, and ruled by fear. The third Rome was never meant to be. You taste salt on the wind, but it is a ghost, a memory. For weeks, there has been no wind, only a suffocating, glassy calm. The sails of your caravel, the Ventura, hang limp and useless, streaked with mildew. The sun is a white-hot hammer, beating down on a sea the colour of molten lead. The pitch in the deck seams has gone soft, sticking to the soles of your bare feet. The water casks are nearly empty, the remaining water thick and warm. Men are beginning to die. You hear their rasping prayers and their delirious curses from the forecastle. You are Cristoforo Colombo, a Genoese captain in the service of the powerful Spinola banking family. It is the year 1585. Your mission was audacious, bordering on insane. For 2 centuries, your people have been the masters of the Atlantic. You have charted the coast of Africa, established a lucrative empire based on gold, ivory, and human lives. And your ships regularly make the long, arduous journey around the Cape of Good Hope to trade in the spice markets of India. You have grown rich, but the journey is long and dangerous. Your idea was simpler, more elegant. You became obsessed with the old maps, the works of Ptolemy and the calculations of the Florentine cosmographer Toscanelli. They were all wrong about the size of the Earth. You were convinced of it. Cipangu, Japan, and the riches of the Grand Khan of Cathay were not on the other side of the world. They were just a few weeks' sail to the west. A direct route, a shortcut that would bypass the treacherous African coast and the Venetian stranglehold on the old Red Sea routes. Your patrons, the Spinola, saw it as a worthy gamble. A long shot, but one that could reshape the world's trade routes and make them the wealthiest family in history. So they gave you 3 ships, a crew of hard-bitten Genoese sailors, and their blessing. In that other world, a man with your name, sailing for the Spanish crown a century earlier, would have stumbled upon a continent by accident, thinking he had reached the Indies. His discovery would unleash an age of conquest, of empire, of a massive, world-altering exchange of peoples, plants, animals, and diseases. But your world's motivations are different. Your Europe is not hungry for new lands to conquer. It is a stable, multipolar world. The Byzantine Empire dominates the eastern Mediterranean. The Venetian Republic controls the Egyptian trade. Your own Genoese Republic has its African empire. The great powers, the Holy Roman Empire, France, are locked in a continental struggle, their ambitions focused on Italy and the Germanies. There is no desperate, outward-looking pressure for new territory. Your voyage is not a quest for empire. It is a commercial venture, a search for a better trade route. And it has been a disaster. You have sailed west for 10 weeks, far longer than you calculated. The trade winds that carried you so swiftly have abandoned you. You are becalmed in a part of the ocean that feels like God's forsaken backyard. The men believe you are cursed, that you have sailed into the devil's sea. They are muttering, their eyes hollow with thirst and fear. You have seen one of them looking at you, his hand resting on the hilt of his knife. This is the unforeseen twist. The Americas are not discovered in a blaze of glory by an agent of a rising imperial power. They are stumbled upon much later by a failed commercial expedition on the verge of collapse. One morning, just before dawn, a cry comes from the lookout. It is a weak, croaking sound, not a shout of triumph. Uccelli, birds. You drag yourself to the rail. You see them, a flock of small land-based birds flying west. A sign. Then, later that day, a sailor fishes a carved piece of wood from the sea. It is clearly man-made. Hope, a feeling you had forgotten, flickers in your chest. That night, under a full moon, the lookout on the lead ship fires the small cannon. the signal for land. You see it. A low, dark line on the horizon. An island. When you make landfall, it is not a glorious ceremony of planting a flag and claiming the land for a great king. It is a desperate crawl onto a sandy beach by a few dozen half-dead men. The natives, a people called the Taino, come out of the woods to meet you. They are naked, gentle, and unafraid. They bring you fresh water in clay pots and offer you strange fruits. To you and your men, they are not souls to be saved or subjects to be conquered. They are angels. They are your salvation. You spend a month on the island, which you name Isola della Salvezza, the island of salvation. Your men recover their strength. You try to communicate with the Taino. You are looking for gold, for cities, for signs of the Grand Khan. They have none. They have small gold ornaments in their noses, and they gesture vaguely towards the west when you ask where they came from. But there are no palaces, no merchants, no spices. This is not Sipangu. It is nothing. A beautiful green primitive wilderness. The ethical tension here is not one of conquest, but of profound, disappointing indifference. You have not found a new route to the riches of the East. You have found a roadblock, a vast, unexpected, and seemingly useless continent. You manage to repair one of your ships, the Nina, and prepare for the return journey. You must leave half your crew behind, promising to return for them. As you sail away, you watch the figures on the beach grow smaller. You know, in your heart, you will not be back. The venture has failed. The Spinola will not fund another. When you finally limp back into the harbour of Genoa, you are not hailed as a hero. You are a failure. Your report to the Spinola is a catalogue of disappointments. Yes, there is land. Vast amounts of it. No. There is no gold, no spices, no civilization to trade with. The people are gentle savages. The plants are strange. You present a few of the trinkets you traded for, a colourful parrot, a strange dried leaf the natives smoke called tobacco. Your patrons are unimpressed. They have lost a fortune. The existence of a new continent is noted in the chronicles. Geographers add a vague, speculative landmass to their maps, labelling it Terra Incognita or Mundus Novus. But it sparks no gold rush, no wave of colonization. Why would any sane nation spend a fortune to send colonists across a terrifying ocean to a wilderness with no obvious profit, when there is real, tangible wealth to be had in Africa and the East? The unclaimed continent remains just that. A few adventurous fishermen from Bristol or Brittany might make the crossing to fish the rich coastal banks. A few outcast religious groups might seek refuge in its vast emptiness. But there will be no Cortez, no Pizarro. No Aztec or Inca empires will be shattered by steel and disease. The great civilizations of the Americas will be left to their own devices, their histories to unfold at their own pace. You, Colombo, have discovered a new world, and your own world has collectively shrugged its shoulders. The greatest discovery in human history has been filed away as a failed business venture. You are standing in the Hall of Mirrors in the Palace of Versailles, but it is not the Versailles you know from faded portraits of a sun king. The year is 1680. The hall is still here, a monument to the ambition of the French king, Louis XIV. But the mirrors reflect a different world, a different balance of power. The light they catch and throw back seems colder, more complex. You are Antoine de Saint-Simon, a duke and a courtier, a man whose life is a finely tuned instrument for observing the nuances of power. You watch your king, Louis, as he receives the ambassadors. He is still a magnificent figure, the centre of his own glittering universe. But his universe is smaller, more constrained than the one his counterpart in our history commanded. France is not the undisputed master of Europe. It is merely one voice in a complex, discordant choir. The first ambassador to approach is from the Holy Roman Empire. He is not the representative of a fragmented patchwork of states, weakened by a century of religious war. He represents a cohesive, centralized empire, its authority strengthened by the undivided Catholic faith that the strong papacy of the last 4 centuries has maintained. The 30 Years' War never happened. The emperor in Vienna wields real power over the German princes, and his gaze is fixed firmly on limiting the ambitions of your king. They are rivals, locked in a slow, grinding struggle for dominance on the continent. The second ambassador is Venetian. He moves with an ancient, mercantile arrogance. His republic is not a fading memory of glory, it is a global superpower. Its control of the Frankish Kingdom of Egypt gives it a stranglehold on the trade from the Indian Ocean. Its navy is the largest and most powerful in the Mediterranean. Venice is the banker, the shipper, the gatekeeper to the east. Your France may have the bigger army, but Venice has the deeper pockets. When the Venetian speaks, even your king listens. The third ambassador is Genoese. He is dressed more soberly than the Venetian, but there is a restless, oceanic energy about him. His Genoese republic is the master of the Atlantic. Its West African trade empire pumps a river of gold into its coffers. Its shipyards produce the finest ocean-going vessels in the world. Its navigators have charted seas no one else has dared to sail. While Venice looks east, Genoa looks west and south, to its own vast sphere of influence. They are the new money, the pioneers, the masters of a new kind of global enterprise. And the fourth figure, waiting patiently, is not an ambassador but an envoy, a protospatharios from the emperor in Constantinople. He is a man of quiet, unnerving confidence. He represents a civilization that sees yours as a precocious and slightly vulgar upstart. His Byzantine Empire is a technological and scientific powerhouse. Its universities are the finest in the world, its engineers are building machines of unprecedented complexity, and its armies are equipped with artillery based on a superior understanding of ballistics. The Byzantines are not a military threat to France, but they are a cultural and intellectual force that cannot be ignored. They are the old masters, and their presence in the room is a quiet rebuke to your king's claims of universal monarchy. This is the world of the 17th century, a concert of empires. It is a multipolar chessboard with no single hegemon. Power is a delicate, shifting balance between the land-based power of France and the Holy Roman Empire and the sea-based empires of Venice, Genoa, and Byzantium. History has not produced a single dominant Western European power like the Spain, France, or Britain of our timeline. Instead, it has produced a group of rivals, each with its own sphere of influence, each checking and balancing the others. The unforeseen twist is the nature of conflict in this world. Wars are frequent, but they are limited. They are wars of professional armies fighting for specific, achievable objectives: a fortress, a province, a trade concession. They are not the total, ideological wars that racked our 17th century. The horrors of the wars of religion never happened. There has been no Street Bartholomew's Day massacre, no sack of Magdeburg. The very idea of a war to the death over a point of doctrine seems insane in a world where pragmatic alliances between Catholic Franks, Orthodox Byzantines, and even hired Mamluk mercenaries are the norm. This world is more stable, but it is also more static. The ethical tension lies in the nature of this stability. It is the stability of a cartel. The great powers have, through a series of treaties and understandings, carved up the world. The Venetians have the East. The Genoese have Africa. The vast, silent continent across the Atlantic remains a remote wilderness, its fate a matter of indifference to the chanceries of Europe. This is a world without the explosive, chaotic, and often brutal expansionism that characterized our early modern period. Progress is slower, more incremental. The scientific revolution is happening in Constantinople, but its practical applications are largely monopolized by the state for military purposes. The Enlightenment, that great flourishing of political and social thought that was born from the ashes of the religious wars in our timeline, has not yet happened here. In a world where the church and the state are so confidently intertwined, who would dare to question the divine right of kings or the authority of the priesthood? You watch as your king, Louis, concludes the audience. His face is a perfect mask of regal grace, but you know him well enough to see the frustration in his eyes. He is the most powerful monarch of the most powerful land-based kingdom in Europe, yet he is hemmed in on all sides. He cannot challenge the Venetians at sea. He cannot match the Genoese in Atlantic trade. He is wary of the emperor's armies on his eastern frontier, and he is painfully aware that in the libraries of Constantinople, scholars are reading books in a language he cannot comprehend, about ideas that have not yet reached Paris. He dreams of la gloire, of French hegemony. But in this world, hegemony is impossible. The concert of empires plays on, a complex and enduring symphony of power, with no single conductor. Your king is merely the first violin, and even he must sometimes play second fiddle. The future is not a story of the rise of the West, but of the enduring balance of the world. The world feels smaller to you, and at the same time, infinitely large. You are Jacques, a silk weaver in Lyon, and the year is 1750. Your loom clicks and clacks in a hypnotic rhythm, the sound that has filled your family's workshop for generations. The threads you work with are not from Italy or the Levant. They come on Venetian ships from Alexandria, having travelled up the Red Sea from Persia and beyond. The Orient, to you, is not a land of fable and mystery. It is a place on a map, a business partner, a source of the raw materials that put bread on your table. Your son Jean is not destined for the loom. He has a quick mind for numbers. He is apprenticed to a Genoese banking house, one that has a branch in your city. He spends his days tracking the price of gold from the West African coast and calculating insurance rates for the fleets that round the Cape. He speaks of places like Genoa and the Congo as if they were neighbouring provinces. Africa is not a dark, unknown continent. It is a place of business, a source of immense wealth, albeit a wealth built on a foundation you prefer not to think about too closely. The map of the world in your mind is one of connections, of trade routes, of a known and interconnected Afro-Eurasia. Yet, your world also feels larger, more mysterious. To the west, across the great ocean lies a silence, the unclaimed continent. You have heard stories, of course, of strange, red-skinned savages, of vast forests where a man could walk for a year without seeing another soul, of mountains that touch the sky. But these are tales for the tavern, like stories of sea monsters or the kingdom of Prester John. It is a place of no consequence. No one you know has ever been there. No one you know ever wants to go. Why would they? Everything a man could want, wealth, knowledge, salvation, is here in the old world. This is the mental landscape of the common person in this alternate 18th century. It is a world without the central, driving myth of the New World. There is no American dream, no frontier to conquer, no vast empty space to project your hopes and fears onto. Your identity is not forged in opposition to a wilderness or in the act of colonization. It is rooted deeply and immovably in your village, your guild, your kingdom, and your church. Your religious identity is absolute, but it is also profoundly political. You are a Catholic. Your neighbour is a Catholic. Your king is a Catholic. But your Catholicism is French. You know that the English broke from Rome a century ago, not because they believed differently, but because their king wanted a new wife. You hear of the German church, the Spanish church, all Catholic in doctrine but fiercely independent in their administration, loyal first to their emperor or king, and second to the Pope in Rome. The universalism of the faith has been fractured by nationalism. Your arguments are not with heretics. There are no Protestants to argue with, but with your fellow Catholics from other nations, who you believe are arrogant or deceitful or simply not French. The lack of a widespread popular Reformation has had a strange effect on your inner life. You do not read the Bible. It is a book for priests, written in a language you do not understand. Your faith is a matter of ritual, of sacraments, of obedience to your parish priest. The intense, personal, literate piety that Protestantism fostered in our world has never taken root here. Your relationship with God is mediated, institutionalized. This has made society more stable, perhaps, but also less dynamic. There is no great wave of popular literacy, no explosion of pamphlets and tracts questioning authority. The printing press is used to print edicts and prayer books, not revolutions. This is the unexpected twist of your daily life. Your world is more technologically advanced in some ways, and far more backward in others. You have seen a demonstration of a steam pump, a marvelous invention based on principles developed by the engineers in Constantinople, used to draw water from a mine. You have heard of doctors in the Crusader Kingdom of Jerusalem who can inoculate against the smallpox using a technique learned from the Arabs. Knowledge flows, but it flows through the high channels of states and wealthy corporations. Yet, your political world is frozen. The ideas that would lead to the American and French revolutions in our timeline are absent. The concept of the rights of man is a philosophical absurdity in a world where your rights are determined by your birth, your guild, and your king. The idea of popular sovereignty is not just radical, it is unthinkable. Power flows from God to the Pope and the kings, not from the people upwards. The stability of the concert of empires has created a corresponding intellectual stability. Or, to put it another way, a stagnation. The ethical tension of your existence is one of comfort versus freedom. Your life is predictable. You will live and die, a silk weaver in Lyon, as your father did. Your son will be a banker. The social order is fixed and unchangeable. There is little chance of rising far above your station, but also little chance of falling. The famines and religious wars that tore our Europe apart have not happened here. Your life is safer, more secure, but it is also a life lived within a cage, albeit a comfortable and well-appointed one. You have security, but you do not have liberty. You do not even have the words to conceive of what you are missing. One evening, a traveller stays at your local inn. He is a Genoese sailor, a man who has seen more of the world than anyone you have ever met. He speaks of the great golden cities of Africa. He speaks of the wonders of Constantinople. And then, his voice dropping, he speaks of a journey he once took, a fool's errand, searching for a westward passage to Japan that never materialized. He speaks of the unclaimed continent. He does not speak of it as a wilderness. He speaks of its people, of vast confederations of tribes in the north, who have built cities of earth and wood, of empires of stone in the mountains of the south, whose roads and armies rival those of the ancients. He speaks of a world teeming with its own history, its own cultures, its own destiny, untouched by your own. You listen, and for the first time, you feel a sense of your own smallness, and the smallness of your interconnected, predictable world. Out there, across the silent ocean, lies an entire half of humanity, living a story you are not a part of. The map in your mind, which had seemed so complete, so known, suddenly tears open, revealing an abyss of terrifying, exhilarating possibility. You go back to your loom, the familiar rhythm, a comfort. But as the shuttle flies back and forth, you can no longer shake the feeling that the tapestry you are weaving is only half of the picture. And so the river of time flows on. The choice to sail south to Cairo, not north to Constantinople, did not simply avert a tragedy. It created a new world, brick by logical brick. A world that is, by the dawn of the 19th century, both recognizable and profoundly alien. It is a world of balance. The explosive, often brutal, expansion of a singular Western European culture did not happen. In its place is a multipolar equilibrium. The Orthodox civilization of Byzantium spared its death blow, experienced a scientific renaissance, becoming a center of learning and technological innovation. The Catholic West, its spiritual authority affirmed by a successful crusade, never shattered in the crucible of Reformation, but instead saw its universal church slowly eroded by the rise of national monarchies. The Islamic world, its Egyptian heartland lost, did not collapse, but reoriented, with Ottoman ambitions forced eastward into a long and transformative dialogue with Persia. This is a world that prizes stability over dynamism. It has avoided the cataclysm of the religious wars and the genocide of the New World conquests. Its societies are more ordered, its hierarchies more rigid. The intellectual ferment that in our world was sparked by the Reformation, the Enlightenment, and the discovery of the Americas has been replaced by a slower, more cautious evolution of thought, one that remains largely subservient to throne and altar. It is a world that has traded the chaotic promise of individual liberty for the comforting certainty of collective order. What was gained? An unbroken thread of classical knowledge. A Christendom that, for all its political rivalries, never truly tore itself in two. The survival of ancient empires and the flourishing of cultures that, in our timeline, were extinguished. A slower, perhaps more humane, integration of the globe, driven by trade rather than by conquest. And what was lost? The fire of revolution, the profound, world-changing belief in the rights of man, an idea forged in the crucible of our world's specific tragedies, the explosive energy of the frontier, the relentless drive for innovation spurred by competition and the vast resources of a conquered continent. The Americas, in this timeline, remain a silent observer, their immense human and natural potential untouched, their civilizations left to follow their own unknown destiny. This history is not a simple trade of horrors for harmony. It is an exchange of one set of complexities for another, a world that solved some of our problems while creating dilemmas we can barely imagine. It reminds us that history is not a morality play. It is a vast, interconnected machine, and a single, different gear can change the function of every part, producing a world that is neither better nor worse, only different.